Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Black Baseball Mixtape podcast. This is a very, very special edition. I am your boy Cheats. I am joined by the Kobe to my Shaq, the Josh Gibson to Satchel Paige. We're trying to think of batteries. Flobito. We're going back and forth. What is good, Flobito? How you feeling?
I'm good. I'm actually hyped, man, because you put me onto this. We were talking about in a second. I was, mind my own business. Like, yo, this dropped. I was like, oh, I gotta drop what I'm doing. Check it out. So I'm excited to be here.
And this we're talking about is New Wave, Baseball's Next Generation. It's a docuseries brought to you by Uninterrupted and Grapefruit Media. This is complete. If you're looking for anything else, this is not the podcast, because this is the New Wave recap episode 1 podcast. I am so excited about this series. I'm so excited about what Uninterrupted was doing. Like, everything that Maverick Carter and LeBron James touch is fantastic. But when I saw this preview and I knew the mission of the mixtape, I know what Flobito is all about as well. I said, we got to tag team this, bro. We got to go back and forth. So episode 1 is in the books. We're going to go back and forth, but I guess I'll start it because let's tag team questions, but I'll start it with the overall impression of what you thought after you finished the first 28 minutes, 30 minutes.
Well, the first thing I thought was like, wait, are they giving the LeBron James treatment? And the answer was yes, because it literally was. I was like, okay, dark colors, like very muted cinematography, young individuals like contemplating their lives and futures. I'm like, I hadn't seen it in baseball ever, let alone with people of color. So I was instantly on board. But, you get kind of cynical. You're like, okay, what's the hook? What's the catch? But I like the fact that it just was onto itself like a cool story. And so they gave us characters to follow. They kind of explain some of the things, even though there are changes in the way how people being farmed or prospected. But I was on board, man. I really hope that this starts a whole new class, no pun intended, of shows like this to get young people interested in the game.
A new wave, if you will, a new wave of shows like this. Yeah. But I think here's the thing. This is where everything's going. Everyone has a camera crew. Everyone has a docuseries type. So here's the thing. I don't know if you watch Drive to Survive, the Formula One reality series on Netflix.
It made me a fan. I'm a DTS guy. Don't tell us Formula One old school people to get upset, but I'm a DTS fan first.
So here's the thing. I love reality TV. I love Drive to Survive because it's sports and drama. Mm-hmm. And so if you're looking for that particular level of drama, this is not that. It's much more of a docuseries like Hey Rookie. Like, have you ever seen what ESPN does with like Hey Rookie, welcome to the NFL type?
Yeah, absolutely.
That was this. But here's what I'm going to tell you, which got me so excited.
Okay.
Based off of the young Black players that they follow, there's so much potential.
Thank you.
There's so much potential for this to be a full-on reality TV. No, I don't necessarily need it to be, because they really do have a job to do. They got to play sports. They've got to make this happen. But there's this element of me that was saying, ooh, there. Not only was what I was seeing was awesome, but there's this like, ooh, there's this element of what could be with some of these players, because you already see the stories write themselves in many ways.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is so awesome. The overall concept, the foresight. I always am amazed at foresight about docuseries, documentaries. The foresight that anyone would say, guys, we're going to have a 2022 draft class where a lot of Black players are going to go in the first round, or have the potential to go in the first round. Let's start to figure out how to document the process for these young Black players. And indeed, I'm going to say it a million times, make a new wave. What amazing foresight.
Yeah, it was. And if you want to be cynical, you would think there was only like one white prospect in baseball. Once you watch out, it's like one dude from Texas. You can do it, bro. Oh, I totally get that, and I'm bored with that. But I think people always ask the big question: why aren't Black kids playing baseball? And you actually have videos addressing this, and it goes in depth. Check out the Black Baseball Mixtape. But I think for me, from my perspective, my answer has always been: you hadn't made it cool. So it could have been very dangerous to make the show that underscores the difficulties of hitting a ball with a bat, or the difficulties of fielding a double play, because we're tired of that. here are these kids that know it, and we'll get into each person's backstory, because some are legacy players, some are fresh in that regard, but they know the difficulties of it, and they're able to do it so well. You see multiple teams of any sport looking to draft them, which is kind of like human wish fulfillment. When we watch Drive to Survive, we want to be in the pit with Lewis Hamilton, but they have such a confidence at 16 and 17 that I don't have in my mid-30s. I'm like, this dude's chilling with a chain, is going, yeah, I could do it, and does it. I'm like, wow, these are the kind of stories, these heroes that end up being posters on walls for kids and go, oh, I saw RJ. I want to be like him when I grow up. You know what I'm saying?
So where do we want to start? Do we want to start with the characters? Do we want to start with the background? You tell me where we want to start, and we'll go from there. But let's go into the series.
The combine, that to me blew me away. Right, there's this whole cattle call of everyone coming in, and you could opt out but still show up. Like that to me was like, oh, that was interesting as heck.
What an amazing backdrop for this series. Like an amazing, because here's the thing. If you want to talk about the individual players, and we will.
Yep.
The other major character in the arc of episode 1 is the combine. It's a character in of itself. And it was so amazing to see a lot of that process. Now, again, the fact that this is only Major League Baseball's second ever, so 2022 was their second ever MLB draft combine. This is something that the NFL and the NBA have been doing for years. As a black man, it always makes me feel uncomfortable.
Oh, absolutely. I'm glad you felt that way.
Oh, absolutely. And it's more uncomfortable in football and basketball, because all you're seeing is young black athletes being picked and prodded and looked over and nitpicked and everything. But the combine is I'm so glad you went there, because it's such an amazing character. It is like the theme and other character in this story. So I am also I think in actuality, when we talk about the challenges of baseball and black baseball, the combine has a lot of potential to expose all of the clubs to players that they would never watch and never see. But the combine still just makes me feel uncomfortable.
No, I'm with you. I thought I was the only person feeling that way. No. And I'm going back to the gamification, and that's why I want to talk about it first, because every one of our characters go through that on this episode. It's when we play MLB The Show or any game, or even Harry Potter, there is that kind of anticipation of being sorted, right? So that kind of thing that you can put yourself in that situation. What if I was a young person, really good at my job, and people were giving me offers? And we saw that layering. And so, yeah, it's new to baseball, a little bit different. And I've been to Petco Park. I did the tour. The tour is okay. There are better tours out there, but seeing the logos on the wall really brought it home. And so we were talking before about going live, and you said you were watching it, but you liked RJ's arc throughout this the most. Chief, I gotta ask you, what about RJ made you go like, that's my guy?
He's the star of this show for me right now. Like, I know who Termarr Johnson is. Okay. I love Termarr Johnson's personality, and he is, if you haven't watched yet, they haven't got to it yet, but spoiler alert, he's a top 4. I think he's top 4 draft pick, top 3 draft pick. He's an amazing player.
Yeah.
But the RJ Austin story, to me, just his personality. I mean, I was hooked when he was like, I eat Waffle House every day.
Yeah.
And he's like sitting with, he has the understanding, support, talent, where he's already giving back and doing a baseball camp for, like, I want to think it was like 7 and 14-year-olds. Yeah. He's with his girlfriend. His parents are like, this guy's a dream kid. And I'm just looking at everything that he's doing, and I'm like, this guy is a dream kid. Tons of talent. And you know what? I love the arc. I love the fact that he's going to the combine. He's going to do all this stuff. But, his fallback plan is Vanderbilt baseball.
Yeah. If it doesn't work out, I'll go to Vandy,
And so, to me, episode 1 overall, I know when we're going to talk about each and every person, but they followed quite a few of the star characters in the show and gave their backstories. But RJ was the guy that I was like, I want to hang out with this dude. Like, This is the guy I want to be around.
it felt like he was half my age, but he also felt like from a different time period. Like, hey, you're young whippersnapper. You too can be a baseball player type thing. It was pretty cool. It was kind of a classic through line for a lot of people who are purists of the game. So I like the fact that he is in this mix as well, and just be able to be that bridge between two of them. But yeah, man, I mean, looks like a stud, plays very well, and the fact that he is a legacy athlete in that way, but is forging his own path, it's pretty sick as well.
Yeah, I felt like we had a lot of legacy athletes, and we had a lot of parents in the docuseries in episode 1, which I really enjoyed seeing, because you really do get a sense of like who the young kids are, who the players are, by seeing who their parents are and how they really kind of taught them and love them. And so it's like RJ's got this mom that's like, is like, I will do anything. This kid is awesome and so forth. And his dad is just like, baseball wasn't my game, but I'm a pro. Like, I can teach him.
Yeah.
I can teach him like how to work hard. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was just like, this kid has it, man. And he smile. He's funny. He's like messing around with his girlfriend. I just love it. There's a scene towards the end where they're all at the compound, they're hitting and so forth. And he was like, yeah, that's my girl. I gotta shout her out. I'm gonna get in trouble otherwise, fellas. Like the fact that he was like, that's my girl. Like, y'all, you can give me a hard time, but I'm rolling over here. I'm like, RJ, you are my guy. You are exactly. My guy.
And to me, that's hilarious and wholesome at the same time. But if you would have asked me my favorite character,
yes,
I went through it had to be Jayson Jones, man. It was almost like out of central casting about this guy who's just like built like a house, has his own logo, just chilling. You know what I'm saying? Like, I want to be that guy. I want to walk into camp the first day and be like, yeah, I'm good at what I do and I can back it up. That was the kind of cockiness, confidence I need every day.
I liked Jayson as obviously he's a phenomenal player. A lot of talent, but his arc may have been the most interesting, most like dramatic. Because you knew, like, bitch, he's like sight off seeing all of these scouts and everybody's like drooling over this guy. Yeah. But then you're like, you realize from his father and from him, and he's like, this is my prove it. This is my prove it time. I gotta prove it. I had a down season, and there was so much of I love the additional commentary from like professionals, because they were talking about him and they were saying like, yeah, you get identified 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade. But if you don't perform, right, you're gonna start falling and keep falling. And that seems to be what happened to Jayson. And so he's like, I'm at almost like a crossroads. And I love that drama for him.
Absolutely. I don't want a network drop, but there's a time I used to work at a major sports cable network that extended.
Flobito, we're
ESPN, baby. And I worked at one of the 30 for 30s, a Robo QB about quarterback Todd Marinovich. And he had a very similar trajectory. His dad was the one that prepped him all the meals, all the drills, thought was the best quarterback of all time, and it didn't work out. And if you know what happened, you can totally just nod and go on. But like, yeah, there's a lot of pressure to perform, and there's a bit of self-doubt in there. But I love having that dynamic, the dualism of that, having that confidence. Is it organic or is it self-put on versus the expectations? And you mentioned it in your last note that a lot of talent I kind of forgot about were kind of involved. Like David Justice looking like Uncle Justice out there, and Rajah David doing analysis. It was great to see.
He looks like the anti-baseball player.
Yeah, it was like baseball.
It's so that? Great. Yeah.
Yeah, just having that mix in there. But those two are the ones we're looking on. You mentioned Termarr as well, and that's
let's get back to Jayson really, because I do want to ask you about his father.
Okay.
There were some real poignant scenes between him and his father, and it was. I want to get your opinion, and I'll tell you what I think.
Okay, like I said, very much like the guy pushing you over the wall, trying to relive his own thing. It's very close to being the villain, but the villain that you learn to respect later on. If this is the only 2 episodes we get, you can go, okay, this is the Lawrence Stroll, this is your evil dad in the room with a cigar and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, man, when you have these skills as a father, and I don't have kids, so I'm just guessing here, and you don't try to pass them on to your kids, that's kind of part of the job, right? So I can't knock them for one, but that was the one point where I go, if it's one person I'm not really feeling off the rip, it's Jason's pops.
That's interesting, because I 100% understand what you're saying, but he said all the right things in the series at the like he was like basically like I've done all I can. I've been teaching him since he was 3.
Yeah,
I've done all I can. Now the fact that when he said now it's time for someone else to teach him, that's different than like a super pop that'd be like, nope, no one else is gonna get my hands on my creation, you know? He was like, no, I've done all I can. You could tell though, there was some stuff there that I'm sure there was some, you know, very, you know, some very, and so that's the question was like, do you want him to be the evil dad, or do you want him to be the dad like? And I always use other sports references, but I'm thinking of LeVar Ball, where it's like at first LeVar Ball is like, yeah, he's kind of the evil bad, he's kind of the showboat, and he's got the loud mouth, and he's putting all the extra pressure on the boys. Then you look at the results, and now you're like, you know, he's got 2 of his 3 kids in the NBA, and you notice when they got there, LeVar did he's a whole new, he's just bad now. He's not like, so I'm wondering if this guy is, like you were saying, Todd Marinovich's dad, or more of like a LeVar. Either way, Jason's been through some things.
I think there's a self-awareness in there. And even if it's like self-imposed or decided to split whatever reason, like LeVar Ball, you said, it has to happen and it will happen. So I give props to that because we all know like dads do push their kids a lot. I mean, even Ichiro doesn't even talk to his dad, where he pushed him back in the day. But at the same time, you're right. If the behavior changes, I will go, oh, I get it. This is just making sure your kid's prepped. If it crosses the line, then you know.
Then you're like, yeah, it's too much.
So my cop-out answer, Cheats, is inconclusive.
Inconclusive.
That is my cop-out answer. Ride the fence.
I feel like that is. I feel like his arc it could have so much drama. So much, because you could also tell he's putting pressure on himself. Yeah, like he's like, I gotta do this. Everything's laid out for me. I've got to perform. And it's like, I've got to win these people back, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. You were going somewhere else.
No, I was just saying, we talked about Termarr Johnson as well. And if there was anyone that was going to be on the poster of this show of the next generation of letting players be themselves. And the show took the moment to say, we're letting kids be themselves. Some may say it's a little too late, but it's actually happening. It's Termarr Johnson. I don't want to spoil the draft because that's actually going to be in part 2, but we all know, if you can, simple Google search can tell you what happened. But it looked like he was ready to be on those programs and those popcorn tubs to be a star of a team.
Very dramatic opening to the entire series as super young Termarr being like, 4 years from now, I want to be like a star. And he's never lost that. And everybody that, you know, is talking about him says that's the guy. You know, the thing that impressed me the most is that, like you were saying, Flo, he wears it so well. He kind of knows he's the man when he walks in the room, but he's still very much a part of the guys. You know what I mean? But you know he's got that. He's got star quality, and to the point where I think we might not have a docuseries if we don't have Termarr. Yeah, like that level of star quality and talent. The only thing that blows my mind is, and this is, I guess, a tribute to baseball and a tribute to 2023 and the scouts and people like Jose Altuve that are proven that it can be done. But you say 5'7", 165, you don't have a lot of scouts drooling. He's got every scout drooling at 5'7", 165. And I was like, that's crazy.
It is on you. Awesome. It's on you, that level, to make the explosion and say, oh, look over here. And so that personality, I'm going to be a star, but then still with the boys, is really what being a star is. And I know I'm not sure that it's intentional, just the way he is, but you look at the captain, you look at The Last Dance, you even look at Kobe, rest his soul, it was always that, I'm going to train hard. I'm better than what people give me credit for. But at the end of the day, there's still a team role. And baseball is still struggling with that, right? As a sport, as a brand, how do you market these players? We talk about Mookie Betts all the time, but if you're not a baseball person, you kind of get lost in the shuffle. But this guy's a generational talent. So you got to be able to allow some of that personality, allow someone to be like, no, I deserve to be here. Let me do the Tonight Show. Where do people go nowadays? I have no idea. Let me get some of that, but at the same time, stay in the team dynamic and not be a bad influence on the team. So I like the fact that Termarr is doing that now at his young age, because that's what gets you noticed. That's what gets you on guest spots and hosting award shows. And that ultimately becomes an ambassador for the game.
He does. He has it all. He has every quality in which you want to put him in front of a television, have him give all of them have $1 million smiles, but have him give a million. But he's also very funny. He like the one thing like you and I felt like you didn't get that much of Termarr. You didn't get as much Termarr as you got some other folks. But you could tell like he's kind of funny. He's a funny guy. He's a great team guy. He's like he was ribbing Jayson about is like, is that your logo, your trademark? How can I get one of those? And then he was like, I gotta pay for it.
Yeah, he's poor, man. I know how
like,
it
where's
is.
my family and friend discount? You know, and I loved everything about Termarr. Okay.
Yeah, hit me.
You know who we're gonna talk about? We gotta talk about Justin Crawford.
That is an anime storyline right there. Because the first time I heard about Justin was in a tabloid when he was a kid. Yep. Because his dad was in a custody battle with his mom.
Yep.
And he's a grown man that one. I'm old.
God, he's
apparently.
Huge. He's a tall, lengthy, like mature. Justin, what'd you think about Justin's character development arc if we're looking at it from a television standpoint?
That is, to me, going into doing what I knew, I was like, oh, is this the same Justin? But like that to me is like the best. I say anime as a joke, but that to me is like the best familial thing. So your dad was in your life, but not all the way. Your mom is supporting you, but she's not a baseball player, right? But yet you still found a way to, one, have the size, and have the skill where you did it on your own, but people are still going to tie you to your pops, even though you're trying to find a way to market your own and you're still getting advice from your pops. It's like a weird, like multi-layered thing of how much of Justin is Justin, how much Justin is with the impressions of media on Justin. This could be, if there was ever a full-time series, I think that's what you would base it off of, just because of how many layers and threads you could pull from this.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Super interesting young man. And like you're saying, going with what all we know of just like his family dynamic and so forth, really impressive young man. Like super, super impressive. I think, and it's very clear, he has a super mom. His mom was like, basically, where we going, what we doing, like, what we got to do now. What, like, she seemed so phenomenal. And you could tell he has a relationship with his dad. His dad, he said, was, obviously with him a lot in the younger days. They showed the clips of him, shagging fly balls in uniforms, his like bat boy and all of that. And so you could tell like he's getting advice from his pops. His pops was with him. If not in this episode, maybe it was a preview. He's with him at the draft, So it's not, but it's definitely like, this guy has a different internal kind of struggle than the other characters that we were talking about. Like, oh, do I need to perform or not? He's got family dynamics. He's got this name. Most people do know Carl Crawford from his playing days. If not, Carl Crawford's still in the press often. Yeah. So it's like he's got to do all of these things, and he seems like a really like. He's not Termarr. He's not like a natural put me in front of the camera, I'm a star. True. He's not an RJ where I feel like it's a natural put me in front of the camera and we're all gonna smile. We're looking at him like we're trying to figure it out. He's clearly a complex young man, maybe even a little bit on the quiet side, right? Or the reserve side. But he's got this huge game. He's got all the skills. And it was just like I'm interested in Justin Crawford's story, but I actually feel like I need more of mom, dad, star player, putting it together. The coach said he hit like 500 his senior year when he started trying to be himself. He stopped trying to be other players. And I'm just like, this is great stuff. Very great stuff.
To me, that has to be by design. And shout out to Grapefruit for this one, because if you didn't know any better, or if you're just looking from the top down, you would think, oh, the son of the baseball player will be the most loud or rambunctious, or be the one that's more about community service. But even though Justin doesn't really have a lane there, the fact he's trying to find himself, even though there is like a backdrop a shadow, if you will, of Carl is something that puts me on board. I think that's pretty cool because a lot of times we think about athletes who get started when they're young and we go, oh, I'm 12 years old. What's the point of starting youth sports? I'm already too old. I can't be a Messi. But then you look at someone who has started early, who has that pedigree, and is still trying to figure out the best way to produce. And that to me is a cool dynamic. And talk about wish fulfillment, watching that there going, that slow walk outside with mom to get steaks.
So great.
I was like, yeah, I hear you.
She's a great mom. Like seems like an amazing, amazing mother. Where it was like you didn't have to worry about love and support. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm sure his dad is as well. But I was just like, you could tell their relationship when he went back to the hotel to give her the updates and the rundowns. She was just like, "You got this. Like, what are we gonna do?" You know?
Yeah.
And it was very like reassuring because it also feel in my mind just by watching this, it felt like he needs that. He needs a mom in his corner being like, you got this. Let's make this happen.
Well, let me ask you a question there, Chiefs. What was like the biggest surprise? We walked into this one, you're like, I'm not really know what to expect. Something came out of nowhere, and you were like, oh wow, this show covered this as well? Or
yeah, I think the depth early on, because again, it is not it's not like a dramatic reality show. Mm-hmm. It is much more closer to a docuseries of like just trying to get through this. So I'm always interested in what's basically allowed, right? Because there are certain things that like there's no matter what you think about this, there are agendas here. And one of the great agendas of this docuseries, which is, I think, a good one.
Yeah.
Is let's show that these programs that Major League Baseball is putting in place are actually yielding results. So all of those guys were parts of the Dream Series. And you go back to their footage in the Dream Series. All of those guys are in the MLB development. They've played in the All-Star games that MLB puts on. And you have footage of that, right? So there's this in the combine in itself. So there's like these arcs of like, okay, what's going to be allowed? How much of it is almost, I think, well-intentioned propaganda versus what's really, really happening. So the stuff that I really like to see, I don't know if it surprised me, but I really like to see were those subtle interactions where it was like 5 of them sitting there. Talk, you know, there was a scene, I guess it was Termarr was talking to a pro outside the batting cage, and they were all like, "Oh, you got to go now." And he's like, "Nah, man, I'm soaking this all in." Like I think he's talking to Rajay Davis, and he's just like, and so, those were like the moments, and any scene that Jerry Manuel was in was like a surprise but awesome because I know how legend much he's around. But it was like the things that were awesome to me was like when they were just like kind of being themselves, but maybe they were soaking up some game. Maybe like it wasn't necessarily for the cameras. It wasn't necessarily staged. If you're you're sitting in line waiting to hit, and somebody's talking to you, that's something that you're waiting to do, So I really, really enjoyed seeing that aspect of it. And we'll talk about this in later because it's another kind of underarming, like a alarming backdrop of this is that decision all of these players still have to make. Where they get drafted, where's the money? Am I going to college? Am I going pro? I loved all of that.
Yeah. We'll talk about the split because I love the little graphic they did with that. But I'm with you. But like I didn't expect the group conversations. Yeah, I'm not sure if 5 guys sit on a vertical axis in a club. Yeah, I don't think guys sit in a vertical axis behind the same thing. Like so, anyway, but the fact they include, and yes, you're right. It is propaganda because RJ basically looked in the camera and was like, "Thanks to the Players Alliance donating these materials, you were able to have this camp." Okay, I get it, yo. Shout out to positive things. But that was the most surprise to me to see that group. So we'll talk about it. So when you are drafted, you have a choice to make, and that's something I really felt underscored because I watched the draft last year live because it was out here in Los Angeles. So to me, that I felt the enormity of that decision, but they actually break it down pretty easy, showing you a graphic of where the different paths are for someone who's drafted.
And it actually, to me, it just illuminates how hard it is. Like basically with that, it's an animated graphic and they're just showing like the majors are way up here.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if you're a number 1 draft pick in the first round or if you're a 15th round draft pick, after 200, 300 other players have been drafted, you got these tracks. And if you choose these tracks, most of you are going to start in A ball and high A and so forth. And if you go to college, that means you're not draft eligible again until after your 3rd year in college. That's when you're draft eligible again. So you're like, it's a real balance of one, how hard it is to get your clock started to play in the major leagues. And then also college is a little bit different with NIL, but it's like how long you want to be broke. Because you're going to be broke in the minors. You're going to be kind of broke in college. Some of them, especially like we were talking about RJ a lot, if RJ does really well with NIL at Vanderbilt, he might do much better than some of the kid that gets drafted out of high school and starts his clock. But you've got so much competition because you got the kids coming out of high school. You got the kids that are drafted out of college. And then you've got a whole pool of international draft players as well that they really didn't talk about in this series. But all of these people are fighting for the top of that pyramid. And you're pretty much broke while you're doing it. So
yeah, exactly.
I think they did a really good job illuminating kind of the process, the choice you have to make, and honestly, how hard it is to be successful.
Yeah, 100%. Maybe because I've done college a bunch of times, I couldn't imagine me sitting in a dorm being like, I said no to the Phillies to be here. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So, but yeah, it's true because you have programs like Vanderbilt, which are world class. And so if you get drafted pretty late or if the team you're not really feeling and you have a chance to have that community with a team, like they were saying, the college dynamics on team is so different to just going from being 18 to Port St. Lucie or whatever have you. That makes it, but I know we heard about rookie ball and A ball, but you're right. Like it isn't like the video game, the show where you play like 10 games in A and get promoted. Right. You could be there for years. You know, you could be in single A Brooklyn Cyclones playing for like 10 years if we call it to double A. And so it is kind of a game of life type of risk. And I know it's kind of funny that it was an 8-bit thing, but that's the first thing I thought about, the board game, the game of life, because there is no wrong answer, but there are a lot of mistakes you can make on going to the show.
A lot. And all of this stuff, I mean, it's so great to see them focus on these players when they're focusing on them. But this is just the beginning. Yeah. Right? This is so far into the beginning of this arc where it's like, you know, and that's the mark of a good kind of docuseries, a good documentary. You want to know what happens to these guys as they go through their careers, whether they make it to Major League Baseball or not. You just want to kind of follow. I know the first thing I did when I got through episode 1 is to look up each player and find out like where they are right now. Like,
you're spoiling yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. But I know. Well, I knew 3 out of the 4. I knew where they were, but I'm like, I wanted to find out like if there was any outlet, and then I wanted to see how they were doing. If they're in the pros or if they're in college, are they getting reps? Are they playing? Are they, you know what I mean? Are they being successful? Yeah. And so I think for the people that watch this, they will follow these players through Port St. Lucie, through A ball, through high A, through college. They're so engaging that they're going to want to know. They're going to want to know what's next.
And that's the most important thing, because it isn't like, the Angel mentioned this too, which I'm so glad someone did. It isn't like you get drafted now and play next year. Or it's like you drafted now and you do half a season and then the star quarterback goes down, they call you up. Like you get drafted and at minimum, ain't no one seen your face like on ESPN for like 2 years, man. That's a grind, man. Imagine being like wearing a Yankees jersey today and then be living at a host family for like 2 years after that.
Let's pull it behind the curtain. It's really funny because like we're both in media and obviously we do a lot of podcasts and I do a lot of interviews. I do tons. It's really interesting to see like a top college baseball prospect player right now. They're in season, so it's a little bit more difficult. But if I reached out to some of the top players at Texas or Vanderbilt or LSU or Florida State and be like, oh, can I get you on the podcast? Absolutely not. But guess what? Guess what? Wait a year because they're going to be an A-ball or double A or wherever. And guess what? You ask the minor league affiliates comm director, oh, can I get, so-and-so on the show? Absolutely. He do it. And it's just so weird how it's like there's these arcs of even like demand and popularity and so forth. And, some people some of the young prospects I interviewed on the podcast so far will tell you, like, man, I went from USC playing in front of like thousands of folks to Port St. Lucie on 11 a.m. where nobody in the stands. It's weird.
Yeah.
It's weird.
And it messes your psyche too. Like, again, like the minor league life, to live on the bus life, that you got to find someone to give you a cot outside life. It's changing. It's getting better, but it is rough. And it's rough on the psyche. So it really is pick your poison. But I mean that in the most positive way about how someone go up that chain. But and MLB The Show, I always go to the team. I always start at single A, and I keep hitting 700 a season. And hopefully every 2 years I get to be promoted. So.
Flo, let me ask you this. As we kind of close out episode 1 and we look forward to episode 2, what are you most looking forward to? Because we know it's really, I guess, it's going to culminate with the draft.
Yeah, so I was at the draft. It was in LA Live, so it was kind of an open air thing last year, and I saw the spectacle. I didn't think MLB did it. I think it's a new thing, right? Because I felt like the MLB drafts when our kid was like, yeah, he got drafted. But now it's this big thing now.
It's a big thing.
Now, I want to see how it's portrayed on the show, because the documentary has 2 missions. One is to explain what the draft is and why it matters and why after round 2, everyone goes home. and 2, understanding like the enormity of it all. How will it be portrayed and how it'll be broken down to a casual fan? Is it going to be seen as like the scary thing? Is it going to be some of pomp and circumstance? I really want to see that. So that's what I'm looking forward to the most in episode 2. And if there is like a season renewal and we get more episodes, I would love to see what happens to those who don't get chosen, who are showing up wearing the suit and tie and sitting there in their couch going, whoops, is that my year?
I'm definitely looking forward to the draft. I think I'm looking forward to that time period after the draft where they have to make a decision. I hope they show this. I don't know if they will, but I would love to get the reasoning, like the logic behind, hey, do we sign? Do we take this signing bonus? Or do we go to college? Is college still an option? How do I weigh that out? And like, how do we go through this? The other thing, and we will never see this. We never see this. We only hear leak stories. And we saw it with Justin Crawford. You see him kind of stand outside of a door. You see him go inside for the interview. Then you don't see the interview. You see him come outside.
Yeah.
I always want to know what happens in those interviews. Like what goes on. Because it's in the NFL, you hear crazy questions in the NFL and NBA. But it's like, I'm always interested to be like, Justin Crawford, what are you going to ask him? Like,
right.
What are you kind of gaining? Because I think Justin was one of the players that didn't work out, right?
Absolutely.
He just did interviews.
He did interviews, which is kind of surreal. See, having the comment going on and being like, all right, I'm here to talk, not to show you how I can do.
What do you think of that? What do you think about that in regards to just people, Justin in particular, but what do you think about people showing up and not working out?
It's totally his right, and I understand why you wouldn't, because especially if you have a little bit of aura around you. Like, I'm a big professional wrestling fan, and I'm going to bring this in here, but there was a time where if you only performed in Japan, you were a legend, and then you get to be on AEW every week, and we go, okay, you're good, but you're not as good. So I get that, but at the same time, you go to the party and you don't dance, people are going to look at you funny. Like, is something okay? Something wrong? Is it an injury thing? So if I was in that position, I probably would work out. I probably would opt out of some of the other things, but hey, you can't fault a guy who says, I know what I have, I know my value. Colorado Rockies, New York Mets, I think those are teams he went into. Let me know what's going on.
The combine makes me so uncomfortable that I probably wouldn't. Like, I know it would hurt your draft stock by not showing up at all.
Yeah.
But if I'm one of the guys we're talking about,
if
I'm RJ Austin, I might work out. If I'm Justin Crawford or Termarr Johnson, I'm not working.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not. If I'm Termarr Johnson, I'm definitely not. I'll just be like, look, you what else I got to prove? You know what I mean?
See my tapes.
Exactly. But because I feel like it's an exercise of trying to figure out what's wrong. Like, they're trying to figure out how to knock you down off the board, right? And so And it's just, again, that the whole combine situation. I've never been in that position. I guess I've been in like tryouts and things like that, but the combine is something different. It really is like, as a black man, it makes me feel
Let's talk about it.
Harken to days where I do not want to ever go back to.
Because it isn't just like you can run really fast. It's
No.
run really fast. It's like wingspan. It's like
so
finger length. It's kind of
it bothers me. It bothers me. But yeah, moving forward, I want to see them kind of wrestle with, do I have a decision to make? The one thing that wasn't present in the docuseries, and maybe by design, but I love agents. I love talking to agents.
Okay,
I love trying to figure out how the agent is doing their job, how the agent is taking care of their player, how the agent's going to negotiate contracts or deals. I love that. And all of those players have agents. All of them.
Yeah.
But you really didn't see that part of the world. Like, what are the agents saying? Like, where is Termarr? Is he going to be 1, 2, 3?
Right. How do you even approach a 17-year-old and their parents and be like, no, your kid's the future?
Well, the answer in baseball, they approach a 12-year-old and a 13-year-old.
Yeah, right.
That's how they do it. They lock them up so early. But here's the thing. Really, really excited about this. And I do think that it's going to be, I think it's great for obviously people like us. I think it's great for the game. Do you think, and this will be our last question before we wrap up, do you think this has the potential to transcend, to cross over, to be something that people talk about like on a larger scale?
So you mean the documentary or the idea of the so I would say yes, asterisks, and we love asterisks in baseball, don't we? There has to be a two-pronged approach. So if you put the documentary out and hope for buzz, and if you get the buzz, it won't translate. What does translate is when you have the content and you give people on-ramps. So if these kids go on Jimmy Fallon and do a game, or they present Nickelodeon Choice Awards, and they do charity events where they shag balls in some random town, barnstorming, I guess, that's what gets people to go, where are you from? Oh, this show? I'll check it out. So, and I say this as a content creator, how many times we did a podcast, have the best damn interview we ever did, and they get 12 views and go, what is going on? But you get
it's going to happen right now.
Yeah, exactly. It's all good, babe. Let's go.
It's all there. We're there.
Don't worry. We get that one guest, for example, who has another following, they retweet, and you get like X amount more than we usually get. That's what baseball has to do. Baseball never had a problem of having superstars, like I said before, on the souvenir cups, on the programs. Everyone who likes baseball knows Ohtani. They know Trout. The question is on the other side. If I am an F1 fan and I ever saw baseball in my life, do I know who Mookie Betts is? And that's the question that they have to answer. So to answer your question, I think it can transcend, but it has to be work done on the back end with the Players Alliance as well.
I think there needs to be just a little bit more drama. Like, this is too... No. I think it's great. And I think it's great for people like us that love the game and want to highlight these amazing personalities and people and the future of the game. In order for it to translate like Drive to Survive, it needs to have that reality show tension.
Mm-hmm.
Yet, I will say this openly, as much as I love it, I don't need it for these guys. They got a job to do. We just talked about how hard it is to be successful. They don't need to be housewives tweeting and blogging type stuff. But right now, this is for the hardcores. This is for the hardcores. And if it goes well, it gets the Black community that likes baseball to follow it, right? Like, they get a peek inside the window. And it gets people like us saying, hey, look at all the great things MLB are doing, because you see those in display. Look at all the great things the Players Alliance are doing. But selfishly, I want this to be Vanderpump Rules type, like, I'm talking following. Like, you know, everybody knows who these kids are. And I think to get there,
well, how would you do that? How would you do that? Like, it isn't like a Red Bull team where there's people in the paddock and these kids are all spread out. And I mean, where would the drama come from? Parents?
You're right. You got to maybe.
Son, you're trash.
But no, you got to figure that out. You got to figure out that. And again, because in our TV worlds, you almost film everything, and then you go back and make the script, right?
Yeah,
There's a script to it.
yeah.
But again, all of those scripts have people hating people, getting canceled and off TV, and I don't want that for any of these guys. But what I do want is like, I'll tell you, that when they did that LeBron James documentary for his high school years, LeBron had been in the league, I don't know, 10 years by the time this high school years LeBron documentary came out. They made that thing the most drama-filled, impactful. And I'm just like, so there's got to be ways, and maybe it's a little bit harder combine draft, but maybe when you get to the arc of a season, when you get to like, let me start really, bringing in more girlfriends, bringing in some coaches, players, like, you know what I mean? Bringing in some parents, coaches, because they're still young. Everybody's going to be around. I know people are going to look at me and be like, Cheatham, you're bugging. Cheatham, whack. This is not what this is about. This is about hardcore baseball. But I'm also looking at it like, how do we get my wife to watch?
Yeah. And definitely props to the editors too, because I was the editor many moons ago. That was my craft by trade. They did a lot with doing nothing. What I mean by not working out, how do you show someone not working out? Yeah. So walking on the long halls, opening doors, closing doors. They have the tools at their disposal. They have the technology to do it. But you're absolutely right. There really isn't a clear-cut villain. We ever talked about that? There isn't a clear-cut objective. If you establish those, it might be something you can clip out and put on social.
Yeah, we don't hate anyone. We like everyone.
Yeah,
like we gotta hate someone. There's gotta be someone.
We gotta hate someone.
That's what LeVar Ball figured out. We gotta hate someone.
We gotta hate somebody.
Give them the people what they want. Everybody loves that reality show.
True.
Flo, this has been great. This is episode 1, Next Wave. We are gonna do a recap of episode 2. Do we miss anything as we close out episode 1? Is there things that we think we missed?
No, I can't wait for part 2. It's New Wave, baseball's next generation, and I want to see renewed. I want to actually see a series. If that's possible. I'm not sure the money situation. I'll love to see more episodes for sure.
Absolutely. We are going to leave it there. This is the Black Baseball Mixtape. Keep it locked because we are covering New Wave as absolute best we can.